Welcome to the conversation. I'm Cariann, and I will be your host for this first segment of the show. Apparently, this is still Jared.
I'm Jared.
Oh, my goodness gracious. This is actually Benjamin, who is our dominant personality.
This is how this show is going to go.
Yeah, I love it. And I also have a Mike, who is our rocket specialist. I'm going to try and stay on the rails this time, I promise. And this is Mr. Dutta, who will be producing the show for us. Today in news...
I should have an astronomical thing, but I don't. Virgin Galactic continues their testing.
Oh, goodness.
And Blue Origin continues testing their big next rocket engine.
Perfect. And for our main topic, we're actually going to be interviewing one of our very own. And then in the third segment, we're going to come back and do questions and comments about last week's show. This is Tomorrow Orbit 11.02.
Good morning. How's everything up in the sky?
See, and these are the reasons that you want to watch live. You're welcome for keeping that in the archive. At the very beginning of the show, I want to make sure I give a huge thank you to all of the citizens of tomorrow, and particularly these escape velocity citizens. These are the people who've given us $10 or more on Patreon, or $30 a month or more on Minds.com. You get your name in the show in all three segments. You get so much more. If you are interested in any of these things, please feel free to visit us over at tomorrow.tv and look up patreon.com/TMRO or minds.com/TMRO.
Cosmic Lettuce wants to know, where's the hair spike, Ben? It'll take me a little more time. Like, updating the name banner is easy. Updating the hairstyle, much, much harder.
Yes,
or not updating
our
the name
Jared
banner.
has shrunken and widened out a little bit. Yep. I said it.
Wow.
Anyway, the other thing that we like to do at the top of the show, besides poke fun at each other, is covers any launches that have happened since the last time we were on air. So, Mr. Mike, our rocket specialist, you're going to be doing a lot of talking today. Yeah. So I'm going to make you talk a little bit in the front end, and give you a little bit of a break, and then grill you a little bit later on. What was our first launch that we might have had since the last show?
Well, last week we were talking about the final launches of 2017, and 2018 has gotten off to a pretty interesting start already. The first launch of this year was SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket launching the classified Zuma payload, and that was on Sunday, January 7th at 1:00 Coordinated Universal Time.
Nice.
Ignition, liftoff.
This launch took place from the repaired, restored, and upgraded Launch Complex 40 in Cape Canaveral, Florida. And the purpose and the orbital target of the classified payload, the Zuma mission, was not disclosed in advance of Sunday night's launch. And even the final stages of Zuma's launch and the deployment of the Falcon 9 from the Falcon 9's upper stage occurred in a news blackout at the request of the customer. And because the satellite is so secret, we don't even know which government agency is the customer. Only the National Reconnaissance Office has come forward and said that it is definitely not one of theirs. The only other thing that we know about Zuma is that it was built by Northrop Grumman, and it is supposed to be launched into a low Earth orbit. So during the media blackout, when the upper stage and Zuma were doing their thing, SpaceX successfully landed the Falcon 9 first stage back at landing zone 1, making this the 21st successful powered landing of a Falcon 9 first stage. So that, of course, is very cool and always worth celebrating, even though it's becoming a bit more routine nowadays. But after the launch, Northrop Grumman did not confirm the status of the mission, whether or not it was successful. And rumors have been picked up that the Zuma mission failed, although a lot of the rumors have saying that it didn't separate from the upper stage. But again, there hasn't been any confirmation, so that's all that it is just rumors. And there is one interesting thing, even though that there is on mainstream media saying that this satellite has crashed into the Indian Ocean, the United States catalog of orbital payloads listed Zuma as USA 280, which is we designate USA for a lot of the secret spy satellites and military payloads, in the same way that the Russians designate their spy satellites as Cosmos satellites first before they actually name them. So this satellite at least made one orbit to be put on the U.S. catalog of orbital objects. So not sure what's going on. And to be honest, we can't really even speculate on it. My theory is that likely whoever owns this satellite probably wants us to think that it failed. But it just doesn't really necessarily matter, because SpaceX, who the DoD has referred to give the public any information as to whether or not this mission was successful, has said that every part of at least the Falcon rocket was successful. They had a successful everything with the first stage. The second stage burned as it was supposed to. The payload fairings separated when they were supposed to, although some people think that they separated later than it was actually planned for. But as far as SpaceX is concerned, their part of this launch was completely successful. So that's all that we really need to talk about it at this point.
All right, cool. I imagine there was at least one other launch or so.
We had quite a few, yeah.
I know China's been busy. Go ahead.
Yes, China's been very busy. We have two back-to-back launches, and the first of which that they did over this past week was a Long March 2D rocket, which launched two new SuperView satellites, which are one of their high-resolution land mapping satellites. This launch occurred on Tuesday, January 9th at 3:24 Coordinated Universal Time from the Taiyuan Space Center in northwestern China. So anyway, the satellites that were delivered to orbit on Tuesday, as I said, were the third and fourth SuperView 1 or Gaojing 1 spacecraft that were launched for the Beijing SpaceView technology. And the satellites feature low-weight, high-agility, high-resolution data services that will not only be used for the mapping that I mentioned earlier, but also for environmental monitoring and for surveillance. So it has that dual use to it. And the first two SuperView 1 satellites were released into a lower than planned orbit back in December of 2016 and used their own propellants to raise themselves into a higher orbit. So now there's 4 of these things out of a planned 24 satellites that they hope to have a constellation of by the 2020s. So there was that particular launch, and you can see at least one of them there with the high resolution camera on the top of that.
That's cool.
And with this, yeah, it was a successful launch for China. But then we need to move on, though, to the next launch that they had, just a couple of days later. On Thursday, January 11th, this time they were launching with a Long March 3B rocket. And this one's a little bit more recognizable because it has the 4 liquid rocket boosters that are strap-ons onto the side of it. Yeah. And this particular launch was launching 2 of the Beidou navigation satellites that are similar to the GPS and GLONASS satellites. And with these, as I said, they were launched on Thursday, January 11th at 23:18 Coordinated Universal Time from the Xicheng Space Center in southwest China. Now, these Beidou satellites were the 26th and 27th satellites to join their navigation network, even though some of the satellites in that network are test satellites and no longer operational. And after a 4-hour coast, the upper stage maneuvered the Beidou satellite into a near-circular orbit around 13,700 miles up, or about 22,000 kilometers above Earth, and is tilted about 55 degrees to the equator. So congratulations for China for having those successful launches.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. And I feel like there's more.
Well, actually, I have a dumb question.
I feel like this keeps going, actually.
Well, hang on. Before we go on, SpaceMike, there was all over the Twitter birds, there was that footage of a Chinese rocket falling back down. That was not a recent. That was not a recent launch, or was that like when did that happen?
That was a recent launch. That was actually from this launch, from this Long March 3B rocket, and it's very common for a lot of their launch sites, except for the one on Hainan Island in south of China, to have their especially the strap-on boosters and the core stages to fall, over land or even populated areas. So there are things that you can look up on Twitter. I was a little nervous about the legality of showing some of those, so I didn't grab any of those videos. videos, but it's very interesting to see some of those. And there's even one video where there's people standing around one of these, I believe it's the core stage, that is still on fire, and they are literally feet away from it. It's crazy.
That is crazy.
So yeah, check that out if you want to check it out. China Spaceflight on Twitter is a really good one for those types of videos.
Yeah, they had a ton of different footage from that coming back down. Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to derail you. I mean, I did, but you know.
Not at all.
You did. All right, what else do we have?
So this next one I'm really excited about because this was actually the return to flight for India's PSLV, the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, which had a mishap last year back in, I believe it was August of last year when they were launching the Uranus 1H satellite, and the payload fairing did not separate from that, so the satellite was lost when the upper stage re-entered the atmosphere. So since then, they've had to do an investigation and figure out exactly what was wrong and qualify the rocket again for flight. And they were able to successfully return the vehicle to flight just yesterday on Friday, January 12th at 3:59 Coordinated Universal Time from the Satish Dhawan Space Center.
4, 3, 2, 1, 0, +1, +2, +3, +4, +5 seconds. +10 seconds.
Oh, man. With this, the payloads were several payloads. There was actually 31 satellites on this particular launch. The primary payload was India's Cartosat-2F mapping satellite, along with the other, 30 secondary payloads for India, the United States, South Korea, Britain, France, Canada, and even Finland.
Wow.
With those, I just want to talk briefly about them. You were able to see the Cartosat separate from there, and that's kind of the carriage for these satellites. And those two satellites that you see there are two actually nanosatellites for India, for the Indian Space Research Organization. And it was so many of these. One of the ones that you just saw on screen there was Telesat's second prototype broadband communication satellite. And there was also an experimental Earth observation craft named Carbonite 2 made by Surrey's satellite technology. And on screen, what you're seeing right now is 4 Dove spacecraft for Planet's commercial Earth imaging network and 4 Lemur 2 CubeSats for Spire Global's commercial ship tracking and weather monitoring constellation. But on top of that, there was also a Landmapper BC CubeSat manufactured and owned by Astro Digital. Planetary Resources also launched their Arcad 6 CubeSat to further on the different technologies they need to advance their Arcad spacecraft to the point that they can start doing asteroid surveying. And then also the Finnish company is really interesting. It's actually a company named IceEye, and they launched their first CubeSat, which had a really compact radar package that would be designed to gather all of the different weather and day and night observations of Earth with a small package. So that's pretty interesting. But aside from that, there was also 19 other demonstrator CubeSats, 5 of which were for South Korea, 10 of which were for the United States, 1 for France, 1 for the United Kingdom, and then I also mentioned the 2 earlier for India. So with this successful launch, hopefully India will be able to increase their launch cadence through 2018. And they have a GSLV Mark II rocket coming up in just a couple of weeks. So really excited to see what the future brings for them.
Yeah, really cool. And that footage was really awesome. Although there were some parts that sort of scared me. It was like there was one part that was hanging out and something flew by really quickly. Like it looked like it came really close. So I was like,
yeah,
what is happening right there?
Yeah, Vax agrees, says this is amazing to watch.
Yeah.
The chat room the whole time was just going over, like finally good video. I mean, just tons of great things from
Yeah, really good, really fun. And then United Launch Alliance, like this also like just happened, right?
Yeah, it just happened yesterday. United Launch Alliance kicked off their first launch of the year with a Delta IV medium. And go ahead and play the video for this, because they finally started doing some really cool diagrams from the beginning, so I really like this. This was launching the National Reconnaissance Office designated NROL-47 spy satellite. And the rocket is the Delta IV medium in the 5-2 configuration, which means that it has a single core booster with 2 solid rocket boosters and a 5-meter payload fairing. Now, this was the last launch of the Delta IV medium from Vandenberg Air Force.
3, 2, we have ignition of the R-68A main engine. And we have liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Delta IV rocket carrying the NROL-47 mission for
I
the
love
National
how
Reconnaissance
it just chars itself. The Delta IV always just burns itself.
I mean, is it trying to look like an already used booster, or what's going on there?
Rocket Tartar.
Right. It's the hip thing to do now, I guess. I'm sorry. Go on.
Anyway, though, for this Delta IV medium, as I said, this was the last launch of it from Vandenberg Air Force Base, and there's only 2 more scheduled launches of the Delta IV medium from Cape Canaveral before the Delta IV medium is retired in favor of the future Vulcan rocket. The Delta IV Heavy, though, will still be launching in the 2020s until a comparable Vulcan configuration is operational. But anyway, this launch took place yesterday on Friday, January 12th. 2 launches in one day, the PSLV and the Delta IV, and it launched at 22:11 Coordinated Universal Time. Now, this launch went as planned, and the significance of it has a little bit of importance for their future technology because it had a new avionics software package on it that apparently performed as expected because the National Reconnaissance Office said that the mission was successful and the payload was successfully delivered into orbit. And one interesting thing about this, unlike the Zuma mission, is we do know that this is some sort of radar spy satellite. And one of the things that gives a lot of the people in the industry a little bit more information about this is it could be the National Reconnaissance Office's Topaz satellites, which are radar spy satellites. And those Topaz satellites in the past followed the same type of trajectory that the Delta IV medium launched on today. In fact, they even launched on the same configuration, the 5-2 configuration, and headed to similar orbital parameters. So we don't know exactly what it is because it's a classified mission, of course, but at least there's a little bit of information.
Awesome. See,
there actually was one more launch that happened earlier.
Are you serious?
But there hasn't been any footage uploaded of it yet.
Yeah, it was
so,
like mere hours before the show.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, okay.
Another Chinese launch.
Yep.
Man, somebody has to sleep around here. Goodness.
No, not in 2018. 2018 is like 1 billion launches this year from everyone.
Apparently.
Like everyone has these huge manifests for launches in 2018. So week after week.
SpaceX is planning 30. China's
planning
35.
Mike
is planning 20.
We're going to keep you busy, man.
Mike is no longer going to be doing news. He's only doing rocket updates.
Just launches, yeah.
I mean, could
but
be.
wait, how awesome is that? That's the state of affairs, right? Where it's like so many launches.
It is. That is amazing. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. Okay, so you are going to take a break for like a half second. Maybe get something to drink. Ben.
Yeah.
SpaceShipTwo.
SpaceShipTwo.
I feel like we haven't talked about SpaceShipTwo in a while.
We haven't. Last time we talked about it was about a little more than 5 months ago when it did its last flight glide test. Mm-hmm. Well, on January 11th, they did another one. Check that out. Another glide test for SpaceShipTwo, potentially the last glide test before powered flight tests resume for SpaceShipTwo. Now, that's kind of that data comes from a conference. It was a December presentation of the Next Generation Suborbital Researchers Conference, where George Whiteside basically said we'll probably do one. I think he said something along the lines of one more glide test before we start power tests. Mm-hmm. This would be that one more glide test. Now, depending upon the data, they may opt to do more glide tests, but it looks like we're very close to powered tests. The last flight, as I mentioned, was in August of 2017. This is the 7th glide flight test for SpaceShipTwo. And they basically stuck the landing, and they brought it, they pushed it nose down for a really fast descent, and they actually tried to get it, well, they didn't try to get it, they got it to Mach 0.9.
Dang.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be pretty awesome starting to see this thing do powered tests again in this year. Again, in that same conference, it was mentioned that once they go into power tests, they're going to continue power tests for a majority of 2018. So if we're going to see paying customers on this this year, which I'm speculating at this point, it would be at the soonest at the very end of the year. Realistically, though, they're taking their time. They're being very cautious with SpaceShipTwo.
Right.
They're not going to race into it. And there was an accident of SpaceShipTwo back in October of 2014, and they need to ensure that that never happens again.
Yeah.
So they're going to take their time through most of the year, but it feels like they're getting closer.
It does.
Right? Now that they're bringing their testing cadence back up, that's a good sign.
6 months out.
That's a good thing. Yeah, I know.
You know, I don't care. I don't care who you work for. I don't care what kind of rockets you normally are into. Some of those shots are so breathtakingly beautiful.
I love the way the new SpaceShipTwo looks.
With the shiny oh my God, and where they're
Go
testing.
back a couple images. There's one where it shows like the nice shiny. Yeah, that one.
Like, how do you not get excited about that?
That looks like the future.
That does look like the future.
And I realize it's the same as Spaceship. I would say Spaceship One, but not Spaceship One. But the first iteration of SpaceShipTwo, right?
No, I get it, but still,
it's so incredible looking.
Yeah.
Now, I know we're all like, ooh, awesome paint job. But, you know, these things matter, right?
They do.
We're so used to rockets and spaceships that are all engineer and no art. And this is both. And there's something refreshing about that, right? I mean, it just looks awesome. And I wish I had the money to go up and take a ride.
Yeah, no
I'd love
kidding.
to see the interior too.
You know,
but like from space, not from on the ground. Because I feel like someone would be like, sure, you can do that. Just walk through it and you'll be fine. Yeah, so, all right, yeah.
Not the same. Not the same.
Yep.
Yeah, just some really amazing shots.
It's great that they're moving along with the test program and it's continuing to move forward. I mean, there are many opportunities that they've had throughout the years to be like, this is, you know, we're not going to keep pushing forward. But
yeah, this stuff is hard, and at any given point in time, you could just go, yeah, this is too hard, and I don't want to do it anymore.
We've seen a lot of new space companies do that. Just be like, no, we can't continue.
Or anything.
Right, exactly, and they seem to have staying power. I don't think that they are a point what they will ever give up. They will figure this out and they will make it go.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Super exciting. All right, so Mr. Mike, hopefully you calm down a little bit. Blue Origin, which is another company that we brought up kind of jokingly that we haven't talked about in a while, but really legitimately we haven't talked about them in a while with them doing quote unquote anything. What's going on with them?
Well, they did have several power tests of their new BE-4 engine, and they've already started the tests of that. They started in October of last year, the first actual full-up power-up of the BE-4 engine. And something that's really interesting about this is a new video that they uploaded that actually has a little bit of sound to it, unlike the last 6-second clip that we got last time that had no sound to it.
Right?
Oh, man. So, yeah, let's check this out because they're moving quite far with it.
Gotta love that.
Just a quick test, but in the associated tweet accompanying this video, Blue Origin said that their latest BE-4 engine test exceeded their ISP, their specific impulse targets. And they are continuing to exercise the deep throttling of their full-scale, the 550,000 pound of thrust BE-4 engine, and also the reusability of their hydrostatic pump bearings and their start-stop cycles to be able to turn the engine on and off. Now, with the throttling, it's really important. Of course, it's a way to control the engine thrust at any given time and helps to manage the acceleration of the rocket. And it's very important throughout the different altitudes and phases of flight, especially since Blue Origin plans to land their future New Glenn rocket under rocket power, just like SpaceX is doing their Falcon rocket. So with this, Blue Origin will continue testing the BE-4 engine throughout the year in order to get it flight ready. And United Launch Alliance hopes to fly the BE-4 engine on its Vulcan rocket as early as 2019, while Blue Origin plans to fly the BE-4 engine on their New Glenn before the end of the decade. Now, essentially, if selected by United Launch Alliance, the official selection hasn't quite come through yet, but if selected to power the Vulcan rocket, which seems the most likely choice at this point, it would essentially be a way for Blue Origin to test their BE-4 engine in an operational status so that Blue Origin can gain as much experience as possible before flying their own rocket. And I also find it really interesting with the Vulcan rocket's idea of partial reusability to recover just the engines from the rocket. So with that, that, they would be able to literally be able to reuse those rockets, even if they haven't used them for powered landings, and get as much experience as they can before they start launching their own rocket, the New Glenn. And once New Glenn does start launching, Blue Origin intends to service the commercial and military markets, as well as some pretty cool proposals like Blue Moon, which could deliver cargo to the vicinity of the moon, either at an orbiting lunar outpost or the surface of the moon itself. Either way, New Glenn would be capable of multiple missions, and I really hope that Blue Origin may even bring back ideas of developing their own crewed capsule to either for orbital or lunar launches, and probably many more ambitious plans that the now richest man in the world has yet to publicly talk about. So I'm really excited for this, and I'm very anxious to see more updates about the progress of the engine testing and how that's going to influence United Launch Alliance's testing, but also really interested to see more of the test flights of using the BE-3 engine on their New Shepard rocket, and seeing which company between Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic is going to start flying paying customers into suborbital space first. So
both should have incredible rides.
Yeah, the views from those windows on the last flight just looked amazing.
Yeah, really amazing.
Yeah, I really want to do that.
Yeah, I'll take a free flight on either one. So Sir Richard Branson or Jeff Bezos, you just let me know. Hook me up with the ticket. No problem.
You guys need free PR, right? Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, to be fair. Anyway,
we've been giving them free PR for years.
Yeah, well, I think that goes against us because they're like, yeah, they're just going to keep doing it anyhow, which is totally true.
It is totally true. Oh, goodness. But, you know, who better to talk about your product than those of us who have been following you from the beginning? In any case.
In the case of Blue Origin, trying to follow you from the beginning.
Doing our damnedest. So, Benjamin.
Yes.
A Rocket Lab.
Rocket. You know what I find interesting is that in the proper news segment, right? So we did all those launches.
Yeah.
We go into news. Our news segment is basically all about next generation launchers and vehicles,
yeah,
right? Like all the news this week is like, here's what's coming on the market soon. Speaking of coming on the market soon, Rocket Lab they're still testing rockets. They've opened up a new launch window. It was delayed from late last year. They had several attempts thwarted. This is actually, this is the footage from late last year. We'll just kind of let it roll. Some of the attempts were thwarted due to weather. The closest they got, which is this footage, was on December 20th when the 20th. That's a number. December 12th, when the count was stopped in the final seconds due to liquid oxygen temperature reading that was above their limits. So basically, their liquid oxygen was too warm. Is that the shirt for the show, the 20th? They have a 9-day launch window when they're going to try. Oh, we've got pug lock on Cariann. There's a 9-day launch window that opens at 1:30 a.m. Coordinated Universal Time on January 19th. Actually, I say 19th in my rundown. I think it actually might be January 20th Coordinated Universal Time. It's a 4-hour launch window each time they open that. It's the same time every single day. Now, there are no major changes planned for this next test. There you go. There was the abort. Oh, and we were all excited. And also, if you go back, by the way, as a side note, go back and watch that launch footage and just kind of like go to like T-1 minute and just turn your sound up. So many birds. Birds everywhere. It was incredible to hear.
Impressive.
Also, the most beautiful launch site I think I have ever seen ever. It's just absolutely gorgeous. So look at that. Look how incredible that is. And I realize that has no impact on the launcher itself. Why are you still pug locked?
Because the 20th is the day after the Tuesday.
I did do that too. It's all right. You'll make it. You'll make it. We'll get through this news, I promise. There are no major changes. Again, look how gorgeous that is. No major changes planned for this launch opportunity versus last month. Basically, just the environmental factors of the liquid oxygen. Either they're going to change the sensor reading, or change an allowed value from the sensor reading, or just keep it a little bit colder. The high altitude winds that scrub several attempts likely won't be an issue for their regular operations. They're just being hyper sensitive right now on their testing rockets. This new rocket, still testing, is going to be carrying instrumentation as well as 3 CubeSats, 2 from Spire and 1 from Planet. labs. Electrons designed to place up to 150 kilograms into sun-synchronous orbit. That first launch of testing, it was testing, right? First launch of testing was May 2017.
Just a test.
Just a test,
Thank
that was
you.
it. May 2017, but it did fail to reach orbit. That was due to a bad link back to the ground and auto termination systems at about, I think it was T plus 4 minutes into flight. And if this flight's successful, it's still testing, they'll hopefully start commercial operations a little bit later on this year. So they are getting very, very close to making this happen. And if you're interested in Rocket Lab, we actually had Peter Beck, this founder and CEO of Rocket Lab, on the show to talk about this. I think it was a couple years ago now. So this is before they ever had any sort of operational anything. And it's a really quite fascinating show, and I totally forgot to get the episode number for you guys. But if you search for TMRO Rocket Lab, it'll just pop right up on Google.
He did say that he would come back on the show once they have flown something.
He said that. However, I can only imagine how insane, crazy busy he is right now, trying to form a company.
Let me say, who better to tell your story than those of us who were there with you at the beginning?
No,
Who doesn't know you? Who knows you better?
We will work to bring him back on.
We've been very supportive the entire time.
As a courtesy, now is the wrong time. Let's let him get into regular launch operations. And then I'd love to bring him back on and have him tell us what was it like with just a test and still testing, and what was the environment like in the control rooms, and what were some of the things you did and didn't expect. I think that's going to be a really great interview.
Let me be clear, he owes us nothing.
However, a little later on, right? I mean, let's not bother him right now. Toost.
Twin.
Twin.
Oh, man.
You're welcome, Internet.
Yep, this is what happens when you're on this part of the show.
This is why we don't let me do news.
Yeah, this is exactly why we don't let you do news.
Jared, we're eager for your return.
Oh, man. Okay, that's plenty for right now. What we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of a calendar break. And when you are rejoining us, we're going to be interviewing one of our very own. Don't point to me. In any case, stay with us. There's more tomorrow coming right up.
Pointed to both of you.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filled with awesome expectation, this girl's a fascination. And nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. 'Cause she's fire walking, she's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving. Through the heat, keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking, she's fire walking to be free.
Welcome to the second segment of the show. I am still Cariann, and I will be your host for this segment as well. Don't worry, I go away at some point. In any case, I want to make sure I give a huge thank you again to most of our citizens who help support the show. These are our Escape Velocity citizens. You learned about them in the last segment. They also, of course, get their name in this segment of the show. They get exclusive access to some of our hangouts. They get early access to After Dark, which comes up a little bit later, and so much more. And we also have our Orbital citizens. These people have contributed $5 or more on Patreon, or $15 or a month or more on Minds.com. Again, if you're interested in any of these things, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO or Minds.com/TMRO, or always visit us here at TMRO.tv. So I know you were thinking, we know a lot about Ben because Ben talks a lot about Ben, and we know a lot about Cariann because we had that interview with her last year. But I don't know so much about Mike. Mike has been on the show. We call him our rocket specialist. Hi, Mike. And the thing is that, for those people who've only been watching for the last couple of orbits, and perfectly understandable, you just have been this mainstay. You've been our resident hologram. You've been our rocket specialist, et cetera, et cetera. But you were doing more than that before you were on Spacevidcast. That's actually kind of how we met. So I was kind of wondering about your background. I want to talk about Epic Future Space, but I want to know how you even got into Epic Future Space to start. What was your motivation for starting that?
Well, I feel like I should start with, as a kid, of course, I was a really big sci-fi nerd. I watched a lot of Star Trek and Star Wars and Babylon 5 and all that sort of stuff. And
Nobody watched
really
Babylon 5. Don't be silly.
Whatever. Babylon 5 is great.
It's like you and Ben. Go on.
But I was kind of disappointed in, as a kid, in what NASA was doing, because I was like, oh, we don't have warp drives, so we're not going to cool planets and meeting aliens and stuff, so whatever. And it wasn't until I was much older and in college and, asking those existential questions of myself, who am I, what am I, where am I, and what is my place in the universe? What is the universe? And just starting to do research just out of curiosity on my own. And looking up, just out of curiosity, just like, what is NASA up to nowadays? And what's going on? Are we still flying the space shuttle? What's going on with all that stuff? And as an adult, being able to comprehend a lot of the information so much more than as a kid being able to, it just really blew my mind and really captured my imagination. And especially learning about the International Space Station and all the work and just brilliant engineering that has gone into creating this thing, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is the modern wonder of the world. And,
totally.
It's just this excitement for what we're doing right now just really lit up I just couldn't believe what we were up to. And so much of it is downplayed, and a lot of it is talked about in such a boring, monotone way that the messages of what we were doing in space at that time wasn't getting out there. Right. And it's a little bit better now. I feel like the mainstream media does talk about different space projects and launches and stuff a little bit more than they used to. But there wasn't really a whole lot of avenues to digest all this different information and even to put it into layman's terms, because I'm just a high school graduate. I've taken some college, but I don't have any degrees in engineering or science or anything like that. I've just had to teach myself all of this. And so this was all back in 2008 that I was starting all of this research. And I first started watching Miles O'Brien and his YouTube channel that he had for a little while before he started working for the PBS NewsHour. And gosh, I cannot remember the name of what his show was called at the moment, but he had a weekly show that was just a quick, I want to say it was only maybe even 15 minutes long of just what's going on with space. And then through that, I discovered you guys. I discovered Spacevidcast. And I, like many of the people who've been around for quite a while, and even a lot of the new folks now, getting into the chat room and being able to interact with other people who are watching and be able to ask direct questions and actually get them answered during the show was just, holy cow, this is a community. And, just wow, there's other people that are just as excited and just as passionate about what's going on who aren't the people doing it, Of course, the people at NASA and the people doing it are passionate about it, but, you don't really see that passion in just regular everyday folks. So getting involved with this community was really kind of life-changing for me. And at that time, you guys used to have this wiki of potential topics to talk about that was pages long of all these different projects and news stories and things that you guys wanted to talk about, but, only had so much time for each show. And I remember going through that, and there was one particular topic that blew my mind. And that was it was this proposal about a concept called Nautilus X to have pretty much our first interplanetary cruiser, and that's how I got the EFS.
All right, good. I'm very glad you brought this up, and you're gonna hate me, and I just know that I do this out of love, and you as a community are going to die when you see this. So exactly what Mike is talking about. It's kind of funny that was the thing that brought you up, or that you brought up. We have a clip, right? Yes, good. We have a clip of, you can see good old Ben and I. You can see our previous director, Mr. Adam Caffeinated, in the background, talking about us discovering Mike jacking one of our ideas, if we've got that.
One of our regulars pointed us to a YouTuber, a kid, who is doing space news updates. They look to be about weekly. And he has a little bit of a following. But I thought it would be really cool if, as the collective space community that we've got here at Spacevidcast, if we all kind of went over and watched his videos and
We
gave him
Give
him positive feedback because he's putting himself out there. You know, actually, we've got a quick clip. Take a look at this clip, and just take a look at what he's doing. It's pretty cool. Here
it
you
is
go.
pretty cool.
Oh gosh. My Windows Media Maker intro. Ugh.
So good. And you did this music, right?
Yeah, I used to produce the music, all the background music for my show.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Mike, and I do space news on this channel, obviously. In my last few videos, I was talking about Beidou Aerospace, which does the inflatable space station. Links below to find out all the information about that. I'm not going to go over all that right now in this video, so you can check those other ones out for that.
Oh my goodness. So my point was, if you go back, and this is your third episode that we were referencing, and for us, if you go back to Spacevidcast, this was season 4, episode 5 for March 11th, 2011. And I'm really proud of our Spacevidcast viewers because you went from 1,000 views. Your previous 2 shows were 1,000 views. And this particular show was 39,000 views, like randomly. I apologize. I probably scared the snot out of you all of a sudden. But you totally did. You totally jacked our topic. The clip is way too long, so we didn't want to go into that much. But we talked a little bit about, like, yeah, actually, that was in our wiki. So I guess we don't have to cover it anymore because he already did. And you did such an amazing job with it, too, which was really great. What made you choose that particular topic? You know, of all the topics to steal from us. No, I'm just kidding. But of all the things to talk about, like, why that one?
Well, I had made a couple of videos before that, like about the space shuttle. I think Discovery was about to fly on 133. But I really wanted to talk about this subject because it was bridging the gap in my mind between the rocket technology that we have now and capsules and the space shuttle to the type of futuristic interplanetary and even interstellar spaceships that I would like to see and that I would love to have. And so even though it's really an advanced concept, even in today's standards, just 7 years later. It was the first idea that just really was just like, yes, there are really cool ideas out there coming from within NASA to have these really ambitious, complex plans that I would love to see. And the whole thing with Nautilus X is it was never supposed to land anywhere. It was just to go back and forth between Earth and Moon orbit and Earth and Mars orbit and potentially even farther. It was going to be a modular system that would be expandable to have longer missions, and it would have docking bays for landers to go down to the surface of the Moon or even the surface of Mars, and had different options for the engines. Could either use ion engines or some sort of advanced nuclear propulsion or even traditional chemical rockets. And you know, it really fired up my imagination, and I was just like, holy cow, this could be something that could be built in my lifetime. If I somehow am able to become an astronaut and I could someday be a commander of a spaceship like this. This is a real spaceship that's bridging the gap between, the piddly little capsules that we have to the spaceships that we see on sci-fi. And I was just, it really kind of set me off of just like, okay, what we are doing right now is leading us towards that Star Trek future. I mean, we already have all the small technology that Star Trek had, from cell phones to communicators to, we're already working on transportation and tractor beams and all sorts of really complex stuff. And the big stuff from Star Trek, and being able to have these really large spaceships, I was like, what we are doing now is leading towards that path. I'm probably not going to see any sort of interstellar stuff within my lifetime, but I might be able to see us going to Mars and the moons of Jupiter and Saturn within my lifetime. And we're working on it. And there's passionate, brilliant people working on these projects. And from there, I mean, I just started doing a lot more stuff on that channel. That particular video got quite a few hits. I think at the time it got around 20,000 views, whereas my previous videos from that had maybe 40 or 50 views. Like we're talking like my close personal friends and like a handful of people from the show who discovered it. And so you guys showing that video on your guys' channel just blew that video up and blew up my channel. I went from like 8 subscribers to like 200 subscribers overnight, and it was crazy. I was just like, oh my gosh, I guess I'm actually going to be doing this now. Like I don't know. It was more just like my friends didn't really want to hear about it. They didn't want to hear about all this nerdy space stuff. So it was more of just a way for me to express all this stuff that I was getting really excited about. And the path from there has just been crazy. You guys on your show discovered that I didn't have a Twitter account, and you guys bombarded me. You're just like, you need to create a Twitter account. And within like 5 minutes of creating it and posting the link for it, I had, like over 100 followers. And I'm just like, Jesus, this is crazy. And I mean, it's still super small, but I mean, compared to having just like a handful of close friends watching the videos to suddenly having several hundred or several thousand people watching your stuff from around the world was mind-blowing. And it started giving lots of different connections. I started going to a local space conference called Space Access, which was an annual space conference. And while I was there, I met a really awesome gentleman named Alvin Remmers, who was doing a website called moonandback.com. And he was going around, he was interviewing people who were involved in the space industry, whether they be astronauts, scientists, engineers, journalists, and talking heads like us. And I believe he even interviewed you, Cariann, at one of the Space Up conferences, and later on interviewed Ben as well. And what happened was he interviewed me first and was so impressed by the passion that I had for what I was learning that he offered me to basically have an unpaid internship. But what he wanted to do was to fly me around the country to all these different space conferences that were happening and do the interviews for him, since I was researching a lot more and retaining a lot of the information more. And of course, I jumped at the opportunity. And all the expenses were paid for these trips. So, of course, the opportunity just to meet some of these people that I am beginning to admire and even idolize was just, of course, I'll go. And I got to meet my heroes. I got to meet Buzz Aldrin. I got to meet John Glenn. I got to meet Scott Carpenter. And I met so many different engineers and scientists that I was able to keep up with. It was always such a surprise to both myself and whoever it was that I was talking to with any particular topic, that I could keep up with them and that I knew what they were talking about. And I had questions about this, that, and connected dots of stuff that might not have necessarily been in whatever articles. And they're just like, ooh, you've already figured out why we're doing this. Like, that's crazy. And just getting the type of responses I got and the type of interviews that I did with moonandback.com were, some of them were gold. One of my favorite interviews that I did with him was actually with Robert Bigelow. And for the first 20 minutes of my interview with him, we were talking about UFOs and crazy experiences that he had as a child and as a young man in Nevada. And, he's into all sorts of crazy UFO research and the whole Skinwalker Ranch thing. There's all sorts of crazy stuff about that. Right. And he was very open to talk about that. But then even moving on to Bigelow Aerospace and the inflatable space structures, he at first he said that he only had maybe 5-10 minutes to sit down with us, and we ended up talking for an hour and even went to dinner afterwards, had drinks, and we're just talking about all these crazy projects. And he was telling me about this really, really big module he wanted to have in the future that a couple years later they started having presentations of, that would be the Olympus module. And just, that was just the opportunity to even meet someone like that was just such a, holy cow, that was mind-blowing. One of my favorite experiences, too, when I was working for them was actually going to a conference in California. I believe it was the New Space Conference. I want to say 2012, maybe. And you guys were there.
I know where you're going with this. Yeah, so back when we were introducing you on our show in 2011, we called you a kid, which is a little bit of a misnomer. You were definitely younger than we are, but you were by no means a kid. And then before the show, we were talking a little bit, and you said in 2011, right? Because we were in New Space 2010. And which was an awesome experience. And then 2011, you said that you got an award from New Space, even though you were unable to be there. Is that correct? But somehow they also managed to call you a kid, which is probably our fault. Yeah. So I'm sorry about that.
I believe the quote was, "They called me a 16-year-old boy."
I love it. I love it.
It was hilarious.
You have a very youthful face. I'm sorry, and those bangs were not doing aging you at all. And then in 2012, we were at the same new space conference, which was really amazing. And that was kind of crazy. If you go back, I think the only place that it's archived is on Epic Future Space, YouTube.com.
Yeah, it's on my channel. If you go on my channel and look up Spacevidcast Takes Over, you'll be able to see that.
In all caps, because that's classic Mike. If anyone ever says anything about you, it's always, of course, your passionate and your enthusiasm for this entire industry, which is exactly why we wanted you to come on and join the show, join the team. But yeah, 2012 kind of shows, that particular show shows you the future of tomorrow, of what we have going on already. Which was kind of cool. What was your experience with the New Space 2012? I'm curious about that. I don't think we ever talked about that.
Oh man. So I for a lot of these conferences, I didn't have a chance to go and see the regular programming because during different speeches, we would try to be interviewing as many people as possible.
For sure.
But at that conference, the people that I did get to interview was great. I mean, I met Eric Anderson, who is the CEO of Planetary Resources, as well as Space Adventures, and very interesting conversation about where both of those companies were going at the time, and talked to a lot of really great folks from ATK and Orbital Sciences at the time, before their merger had happened. And they were still pushing this idea of having a crewed capsule, Orion Light, that would launch on their Liberty rocket. And one of the really cool things that one of the other guys that I met, gosh, his name is right on the tip of my tongue. He's one of the program managers at Boeing for what's now the Starliner, the CST-100. And really interesting conversations about where the future of Boeing was going to go. And that was kind of my first eye-opening experience, that just like, oh, wait a minute. You guys aren't just doing the government launches. You guys actually have some ambitious plans, and leading me to proposals that they had for lunar landers and bigger space observatories and just all sorts of really exotic missions. And even you guys, you had episodes that had people like John Karras from Lockheed Martin, who had these really ambitious plans that have kind of turned into the Mars Base Camp idea and Cislunar 1000. And I was just like, wow, even these big companies that I have like weird feelings about, thinking that they're just kind of the big money guzzlers of the industry, are actually still passionate, and not to just completely not to count them out, and not to think that they are just in it for the money or whatever. There are people in these big companies that are just as passionate as the people that we see at SpaceX making these things happen. And that particular conference, I mean, met Bill Nye there. That was really cool. And just a lot of the conversations from that one were really good. Every conference I've been to has been really interesting conversations, and just really interesting ideas that have come out, and connecting dots, or even making connections with other people. I remember even seeing deals kind of unfold before my eyes that I wouldn't actually hear about publicly until years later. And just, it's been mind-blowing. And I remember after you guys, it was a really interesting experience of how we even started bringing me on the show. After the 2012 conference, it wasn't maybe like a year or two after that you guys started working for SpaceX and moved out here to California from Minnesota. And since you guys couldn't talk about SpaceX anymore with the non-disclosure agreements, that's kind of the primary reason that you guys brought me on, because I mean, SpaceX is still one of the biggest news topics when it comes to rocket launches and rocketry and spaceflight in general. So it's just like, you can't just not talk about SpaceX from now on. And at first, that's all I did. I would just come on to talk about whether it be a SpaceX launch or a proposal that had come out, and that was it. And it kind of grew and evolved into being a regular integral part of the show and talking about all these different news subjects. And then it just grew from there. And I remember you guys back in like the 2010 to 2012 days used to have space pods that you guys would produce yourself. And I really liked those. I mean, don't get me wrong, the 1 hour format that we have and that you've had from the beginning, I've always liked it, but even just the short, easily digestible news pods I really liked those. And so bringing those back, and once we got on more people, I remember when we brought on Jared and brought on Lisa Stojanowski and started producing those space pods. And I remember at one point I think I was producing like 2 of those a week when we were putting out a ton, and we even had Ariel Waldman on doing space pods for months. And man, it's been an incredible experience. I mean, I still feel like I am in a way unqualified because I feel like I'm just a regular guy. And yes, I do have a lot of knowledge about this stuff and I've done a lot of research about it, but it just blows my mind that we are able to do this show. We have the support that we have and the enthusiasm and shared excitement about space that we have in this awesome community here. And just sometimes I almost get overwhelmed thinking about, especially when we started Patreon, and just the generosity of you guys who are watching this show, who have supported us. And just, there's times where like I can't even say anything because I'll get emotional about it. And not only has it changed the course of this show, but it's changed the course of my life. And I feel like over the past couple of years, I haven't had as much motivation to do my own channel. I am going to be starting that up again. I know I say that a lot, but things have finally worked out in such a way in my personal life that I have the time to finally do it. Whereas before, I only really had the time to just produce either space pods or just the live show. And it's been an incredible experience. And it's a little weird sometimes to think about how long it's been. And I think I created my YouTube channel in late 2010 and started uploading early 2011. And by March, you guys had discovered my channel and propelled me to making videos for more people than just my close circle of friends. And it's always really humbling for me to go to conferences or meet people or have people write comments and, express their, like, I don't want to say admiration, but I guess that just express their surprise at my knowledge, especially when I go to conferences. And there are people who I respect and admire a lot who value my opinion. I remember one time having a conversation with Alan Stern, and we were talking about different suborbital experiments and ways to do it on the Link spacecraft and the SpaceShipTwo spacecraft, and he was asking my opinion about things. And I'm just like, dude, you're way smarter than me when it comes to this. Like, why do you care what I think about it,
That's amazing.
Oh, man.
No, it's because you have this, I don't want this to come off badly, you have this sort of savant quality to retain this information. I personally am continually not just impressed, but intimidated by the wealth of knowledge that you have in this particular area. We all bring something different to the show. We've talked about that a number of times, but really, there's a reason that we call you our rocket specialist. You know the names of the bolts that go on the side versus the stuff that goes on the bottom. Like, it's ridiculous, the kind of stuff that you know. So of course, somebody, and I totally understand that somebody that you look up to and you admire, asking your opinion can be very intimidating, but it's very well worth it in every single way. As Neuropilot in the chat room says, remember Andy Weir's self-taught rocket scientist. Time and time again in the chat room, I keep getting these messages of Cosmic Lettuce says, what I like most about Mike is his joy and passion. Minnie Stoach says, Hollow Mike is a positive feedback loop. He gets more excited the longer his program runs. Prismara says, I feel the current Mike is way more intense than young Mike, which is not exactly true. If you go back, young Mike was very intense. BEF says SpaceMike is wonderfully enthusiastic.
Start off all calm and just like, oh, hey, what's
Yeah, you tried. It didn't work very well.
We're going to talk about this. It's going to be awesome.
Exactly. And I think one of my favorites is from Vogan. Says, SpaceMike, you win the Tomorrow Most Enthusiastic Presenter Award. Like I said, you can't talk about SpaceMike without talking about some sort of enthusiasm. And as much as Ben and I try to bring our particular passions to the screen, you always outshine us in every single way. And I always appreciate. I don't always see eye to eye with you. I will be very honest, but I always appreciate your enthusiasm. I mean, that's why we have all of us. If we all stood here and we all agreed on everything all of the time, this would be the world's most boring show. Yeah, this would be awful. I do want to ask you one kind of weird, not exactly on topic, but also not exactly off topic kind of question, which is to say, like, why be on this show? Like, what's your experience being one of our only? Because we have you and we've got Lisa, who are kind of remote presenters. What's your experience like? But really, why be on this show? You already had your own show. Like, why join us?
Mm-hmm. Well, for one, you guys had a little bit of a wider audience. And that's not necessarily that I'm wanting attention or anything like that, but it's more of just like, even when doing my own YouTube channel, it's just like, okay, the way for things to grow for yourself and the projects that we're talking about is to cross-promote each other and collaborate with each other. Mm-hmm. And I remember it was actually... even though it's just a small thing, I did have ad revenue on my channel, and I got attacked by flat earthers, and they disabled my channel for years. In fact, it's still disabled. I am banned for life from using AdSense at all through Google. With my name, my social security number. Like, I can't just create a new AdSense account. I am banned for life, because they would not appeal my, or rather accept my appeals to a lot of these content claims and a lot of this stuff that, these particular guys were flagging me against. And, I don't, it's whatever. A lot of those channels were deleted anyway, and I didn't have to do really anything to try to backlash them. All I did was just try to appeal it. And so that was kind of a bit of a bummer, even though it was like nickels. We're talking like maybe $5 a month, from the videos that I was making. It was still something to like progress to, because my whole hope and my whole dream has been like, I want to quit my day job, man. I don't want to work 9-to-5s anymore. I don't want to be this poor, poverty dude. If you guys knew what my actual like personal life was like and the actual living conditions that I have, like, especially over the past couple of years, you guys would probably be shocked at the lifestyle that I have. And my whole dream has been to just like, it would be so great, because I love talking about this so much, that this could be my full-time job. So sorry if this is kind of a long answer, but with you guys have compensated me and Jared and Lisa, and I'm sure Dada's fairly, to come on these shows. And it's been a nice little supplemental income, so that, yes, I still have to work. Crappy jobs, and not crappy jobs, but, the 9-to-5, the grind of working for somebody else and not doing what you're actually passionate about. But with the supplemental income that I do get from doing this, it's just like, okay, I'm on that path again of this could be, I want this to be my full-time job. I want this to be my life someday. I really, really, really crave to be able to have the time to just be able to work on space videos for like 5-6 hours a day. That would just be great. But coming on this show too, the big thing that made me want to was just the idea of being able to collaborate with each other, bounce ideas off of each other. And I really like how when we do disagree, and we kind of have to, and we're always very polite and very rational about, here's why I think this way and here's why I disagree with you, and it could work out this way, but this is what we think. And it's always really interesting conversations. And sometimes we do agree with each other a lot, and there's not anything to really argue about unless one of us wants to play devil's advocate. But it is interesting how we all have different opinions, and being involved with this community has been really cool. Although I will say that being one of the remote hosts of it is very lonely, actually. Being just alone in a room, and I love how I play to you guys and do the whole acting like I'm actually there, and it's a lot of fun, and it's really easy to visualize. But something I miss, and that I've really enjoyed whenever I've been able to come out and actually be there physically in studio, is all of the talk before and after the shows, being able to plan that coordinatedly, and there's just something about working on the show in person with each other, and even just presenting the show in person with each other. And I think that's been some of my biggest highlights with being on Tomorrow, is the times that I have been able to come out in studio and see all of you guys physically, and the first time coming out, being able to go and take a tour of the SpaceX factory and just, I think that's been huge. And so it's mainly the sense of community that we have, and the projects that we talk about, and the kind of freedom that you guys give me. You guys don't really limit me or like just be like, oh no, you can't talk about that, or we shouldn't do this. And it's not like I'm talking about anything crazy or anything like that, but I still feel like I can talk about whatever subjects I want, and it's relevant and interesting to whatever we have to talk about that particular week. And that's the one thing that I wish, though. I really want to, especially with the way things are going right now, I don't really have a whole lot tying me down here. And what I would want to do is really come out there and be there in studio and just really crank out the videos. I want to start doing a whole bunch more space pods, or even doing a lot of stuff on my own channel again, and building the community. I mean, we're at the beginnings of a network here. We have the Tomorrow Science Show, and there's so many potential things that we could do in the future, and I want all of that synergy to work together, because the reason that I'm doing any of this in the first place is because I feel like spaceflight and science and exploring the cosmos and trying to figure out our backup plan is the most noble human activity right now. It transcends all of our drama, all of our BS, all of these wars and terrorist attacks and just economics and politics and just all of the crap that our governments and our just regular everyday people are going through on a daily basis. Spaceflight transcends all of that. It makes the borders between countries and enemies disappear. And even with the different situations that have been going on over the past couple of years, we've still been able to collaborate with all the different people who are capable of working on this stuff around the world. And even more, just starting a little bit more collaboration with China. And what I really want to see is for all of us to be in this journey together. Right now, there is a lot more collaboration, but each kind of group is still doing their own thing. NASA and ESA and JAXA and Roscosmos and even China all kind of have their own similar but independent goals. And it's over the past couple of years, things are coalescing more and more and more. And the start of the International Space Station project isn't just this brilliant engineering project and a modern wonder of the world. In my mind, it is the seed of, as cheesy as this sounds, world peace and worldwide cooperation so that we can all be the citizens of Earth. I do not care about your different nationalities or your pride for your specific nation. We should have pride in our species and us all in this together on Spaceship Earth. And space flight, especially right now, is accomplishing that goal. And so even as exciting and nerdy as it is sometimes to get into the nuts and bolts of the technical details of it, it blows my mind every day about how we are bringing the world together. We are bringing people together. Hardened enemies that would have killed each other just a couple of years ago, collaborating on interesting and noble projects, trying to save not only humanity and save our planet, but to move forward and to be able to keep our species on the path of survival and eventually get out there and explore the cosmos and have our Star Trek future. And that's why I'm doing this.
I'm not gonna top that. I will say though that it is our pleasure to be able to give you any sort of platform above and beyond the one that you've already built for yourself, and you are a joy to work with every single time that we are together. So thank you, actually, for being a wonderful participant and citizen of tomorrow. We couldn't do this without you either. So as all the praise that you were giving Ben and myself and all the rest of the team here and tomorrow, really, it would not be the same without you. So we appreciate you for all that you do and all that you bring. I'm not going to make you cry, I promise. What we're going to do
Thank you very much.
is we're going to take another break so we can reset. And when we come back, we will have your questions and comments from last week's orbit. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Science. It both draws us together and tears us apart, brings discoveries to cure us and threaten us. It is neither good nor evil. It is what we decide to make of it. There is so much more to learn, and we are curious. Together, let's explore the science of tomorrow.
And tomorrow continues. Now, before we get on with the comments section of the show, I did want to give a huge thank you to all of the citizens of tomorrow who have helped to make this specific segment of this episode happen. These are our Escape Velocity citizens who have contributed $10 or more to this episode. We also have our Orbital citizens who have contributed $5 or more to this episode, and our Suborbital citizens who have contributed $2.50 or more. And at that level, you're going to get your name in the show in this segment, access to our Patreon-only hangouts, After Dark as soon as it's available, and many other things. To find out how you can become a citizen of tomorrow, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO or minds.com/TMRO. All right, and to a couple of things that SpaceMike talked about in his segment. First off, we absolutely love and adore having all of our contributors on the show. And SpaceMike, you, I believe, were the first addition to the show that we had from a talent perspective, and it's been an incredible ride this whole time.
Any talent, because you and I, not talented.
Not at all.
Nope.
One of the things that we do want to do, talking about some of your points, there is something better about having you in studio. So some of our rewards and goals, some of our goals that we're hitting with our crowdfunding campaigns, our citizenship, is a hope that we'll be able to fly you in each and every week. To have you show up in person and be, instead of essentially, what is it, the hollow emitter?
Yeah.
Yeah, have a hollow emitter, so he'll be actually in studio. Because there is something better about having you here. There's not the latency, the lag. And as you said, there's stuff that goes on behind the scenes. Also, I'm hopeful, as you talked about becoming a network, my hope is that as we bring on science and as we bring on tech and transit and all these other shows, we will hopefully bring on a larger community as well. And not all of them, we'll call it like 5% of the community, maybe a little less, will hopefully help contribute to the shows. But that extra contribution will allow us to do things like bring on SpaceMike full time so he can produce space shows all of the time. We can send him to space conferences and go really deep dive into some of these things. Do a 20 or 30-minute space pod, I don't know what we would call that just goes stupid deep into a topic. I think this is the future of the show. This is what we're trying to do. We're just trying to build a foundation that allows us to pay for all of that, because all of this takes money. And if you're going to work on it full time, you still have living expenses and things to do. So that's the plan. It's a long-term plan. It's not going to happen in 2018. But if you look at where we've been over the last decade or so, we've been slowly creeping towards this and getting better and compensating better and being able to allow people to do more. So that's kind of what we're planning on doing and hoping to do. And I've realized that I need to have a Citizens Hangout sometime in the near future so we can go over all of that. All right, let's go ahead and get started with comments from our last week's show. Capcom, I'll hand it over to you.
Hi, I'm Cariann, and I will continue to be your host even in the third segment.
I'm sorry, you have me back now. I'm so sorry. Everything's going to go back downhill.
Yeah, I'm not...
Oh, wait, no, my name's Jared, so we can blame Jared for all this.
Fantastic. Last week, we, of course, being the first show of Orbit 11, we were looking forward to 2018. Oh, look at that nifty graphic and everything.
I like the new thumbnail. I got a little bit of pushback on that, but I like the new thumbnail because it pops out in YouTube. It's much easier to see, and that's not black on the left. That's actually very dark purple. Random notes that you don't care about. You're welcome, Internet.
Thanks, Ben. One day we'll look back onto the show notes of this one and be like, Easter egg.
Yeah, neat.
Little Easter egg for you there.
Yeah.
So good. Why are you on the show again?
I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, first comment comes off of YouTube from a one Doug Gwynn saying, Juno's orbit degrades only due to friction with Jupiter's atmosphere, not because of gravitation and such. I think that was actually my miscall on that one.
No, I think that was me, and I'm not sure it's a miscall. So I think we may be splitting hairs here, but Jupiter, all objects in our solar system all objects have gravity, right? So Jupiter has an especially large amount of gravity because it's a very massive planet, right?
Big gravity? Yeah, okay.
Dense, lots of gravity. So I think the idea behind what Doug is saying is that the friction is going to pull it down before the gravity is. Mm-hmm. I think the point that was made, and maybe incorrectly, but the point that was made is that no matter what, whether there's friction or not, the gravity is going to pull it down. So even if there was absolutely no friction, it's still going to crash into Jupiter because Jupiter's gravity is going to pull it down. So no matter what, it's going to crash into Jupiter someday. Now that amount of time would vary greatly based on its current orbital velocity, like how fast is it going, how much decay.
You are making Vax very upset right now.
Why? It's in a really large elliptical orbit too, which does dip a little bit into.
You're making the whole chat room very upset.
Faster.
But yeah, apparently I'm completely wrong.
It would still be.
No.
I understood it.
Ben is always wrong. No, they're saying gravity does not degrade orbits. So all right, I'll take it all back. I'll say that gravity cannot degrade an orbit. And that it would have to, because I suppose technically speaking, if there was absolutely no drag.
Even geostationary satellites pull down eventually. I mean, most of those things are going to be up there for thousands and thousands and thousands of years before they get to a lower enough orbit that they would re-enter. But they're still going to come down eventually. We have the graveyard orbit for a reason. I don't know, unless
Look,
we are
all I know is that Vax never speaks in all caps, and he's straight out.
So, I guess clearly there is something that I am not comprehending, but I guess I'm not comprehending how a massive gravitational object would not have an impact on something unless. Yeah, so I mean, even objects that we send to the outer planets, we're constantly making course correct. All right, so I'll just shut up and say, all right, fine. It's going to fall back because of essentially drag. All right. No. So because the chat room is adamant that I am wrong, so I'm going to do is I'm going to either figure out that I am indeed wrong, which is quite likely at this point because the number of people who have said I'm wrong is. Incredible, or I will come back with some sort of math that proves that I am not actually wrong. So, all right, one of the two. But that will have to be for another show. Moving on, Capcom.
Wow. Next comment comes off of YouTube.
Hey, I'm saying I'm probably wrong. I know. I have to back it up with numbers if I'm going to say that I'm right.
I'm very scared right now. From SP123100. I still think that should be SP31231000, but that's okay. It says, Happy New Year, gang. With the seeming cancellation of Red Dragon, the shifting to the right to the circumlunar mission, I can talk, I was wondering what your opinions were on striking the balance between announcing these missions to get the public excited and engaged, and the loss of faith from the public when they vanish or get shelved at a later date. My opinion is that I would rather have an aspirational mission to get excited about, even if I suspect it might be unrealistic.
And that, I mean, it talks.
Yeah, like, what am I going to do with my constellation tattoo?
And what are you going to do with the constellation tattoo?
Actually, the constellation program
you get another tattoo over it that says canceled because duh.
No, the constellation program had a cool emblem.
It did have a really cool emblem.
Yeah, I liked it was pretty neat.
Or you change it so it still says cancellation. I'm not really sure.
Cancellation.
I think that's kind of, we're all sort of in the same boat on that one, I think, right? Like, I would like to be excited. But at the same time, there is the pratfall of every 6 months, just their Virgin Galactic is just 6 months away. That's why that joke persists. Because however closer we always feel to that end goal, we never really seem to get there. And that's really frustrating for a lot of people. But at the same time, like, that's one of the reasons that SpaceX flies wheels of cheese and Teslas, because, big chunky blocks of concrete are boring, and I'm not going to get excited about that. Like, I'm sorry, but I'm not. I'm going to get way more excited about even Blue Origin recently. The stuff that they're doing is really, really cool. But even they were like, hey, let's put a dummy in there, give them a cute name, which they did, and, put a camera on it. Like, then it looks like it's a human, and I can relate to that, even though it's a dummy. Like, yes, I would rather be more excited about that. Yeah, right? But, maybe that's just me. I don't know. Yes, you?
Yeah, no, I feel like, especially what SP123-100 is talking about is I feel like a lot of these programs change every administration, and so I feel the same way. We really do need something that can, even if it is unrealistic, to get excited about and have some sort of goal to move forward to. But I feel like since Constellation, maybe not as much with some of the big programs before that, but at least since Constellation, it seems like even if a program does get canceled, NASA's finding interesting ways to reuse that somehow. Mm-hmm. Like, I was really upset that the NASA ARM mission got canceled, Asteroid Redirect mission. But some of the elements of that are moving into other programs. And the primary piece of the NASA ARM mission is going to be the first piece of or at least is being studied to be the first piece of the Deep Space Gateway. So it's just like, okay, there's already been a lot of work done. They've already even built some from really small subscale test articles of this, and putting out all these different contracts and spending money to get these giants of industry to study better ways of being able to build and manufacture all the different pieces for these type of ideas. So I agree. It is very disheartening whenever programs get canceled, but I feel like things are at least maybe for now getting a little bit better, where we're not just completely wasting everything and trying to take the progress that we have and apply that towards something else that has a similar or better goal.
Yeah. Perfect.
All right, moving on.
Next comment comes off of YouTube from Hoja Da. Hoya?
That sounds about right.
Hoya Da?
Yep.
Says, I think we should be returning to the moon before the last Apollo astronaut dies, so we will always have somebody alive who's walked on the moon since 1969.
I mean, yeah. So, yeah, I don't necessarily disagree, although I think that's kind of almost a false marker. That's... I agree with the sentiment. I'm split on this one, right? Because it sucks that we're in a position where that has to be a statement at all.
Right.
Right? But at the same time, we shouldn't rush to go back to the moon only to get flags and footprints again.
Right.
We need to go back correctly. And if that means it takes a little bit more time to go back correctly so we can stay, I would prefer it take a little bit more time so we can stay, and it's not just a temporary thing.
If we can just convince some of the current people who are still alive who have walked on the moon to head on over to the Kurzweilian camp of life and just decide to live forever, that would really help. I think that's just a better idea. No, I mean, yeah, I of course agree with that wholeheartedly. Don't just go back to the moon to just say that we've gone back to the moon. That's the flags and footprints style of things. Go back to be there, to stay, to learn, to build. Actual megastructures, not just fake alien megastructures. Mike, did you have something to add to that?
No, I think no, you guys summed that up pretty well. I do like that sentiment, though. It would be nice, but we do need to go back for the right reasons and actually have a deeper purpose for going, and a sustainable purpose for going, not just flags and footprints. So
yeah. Totally.
I mean, not that they're saying flags and footprints, but I don't think that alone is a reason. I understand the reasoning behind it and like the desire to be, because wouldn't it suck if we went to the moon and then we took so long to get back?
Well, kind of like we've had people continually in space on the International Space Station. Right? Like,
sure.
Once you get somebody there, you always have somebody there, and there's something to be said about that, and that's a lofty goal, no pun intended, or it's something to work towards for sure, and it's something to be respected as something that has happened so far. But at the same time, yeah, you don't want to just continually say, oh, yep, nope, I did that, yep, nope, I was there. It's kind of like when you are counting all of the states that you've ever lived in, and you flew through Denver, Colorado once, like you were only there at the airport, so you lived there for all of an hour and a half, it doesn't count. It's not the same. You didn't experience it in the same way. You don't really know the culture. You don't need all of those things. If you just are going back to put another flag, so that it has pretty colors on it, or to prove that it waves, or what have you, like it's just silly, right? It doesn't make sense. Prove that it doesn't wave is what I meant. I apologize. Next one comes off of YouTube from Radamundo, I think. So it's another great show, guys. Thank you. I was hoping to get some more of the local intel from you guys regarding Falcon Heavy launch. I'll be coming from outside the U.S. and have not been able to see launch before, but I've always wanted to. Local intel, like, for example, do you get a ticket or you don't bother because they're sold out? Rather park view over here or over there? Most awesome hot dogs? I have no idea. Or pack a picnic. Take your own alcohol. Best mushrooms here or there. Or stuff for like that, just go camp here at this hippie place and all will become clear. I like this comment. I think this was really funny. It's been a while since we've seen a launch. Ben?
Yeah, I think you and I together, I think the last one was the shuttle.
Yeah, which was 2011, and it's now 2018, so that feels like an eternity. But if you want to ever see any launch, just know that there's going to be delays. Just always know. There's probably going to be delays. The times that they go off without a hitch on the very first try are probably at this point more surprising than anything. But in general, for something like Heavy, I would imagine that you can see it for pretty far.
Yeah, that's the thing with any launch, especially from the Space Coast, because it's so flat. There is no bad seat anywhere, at all. The closer you can get to it, the more impactful the sound will be. But frankly, if you're anywhere in Titusville, like at Spaceview Park, or anywhere nearby, it will be an incredible.
However, if I can make a suggestion, be with other people.
Yeah.
Because we always liken it to the idea of watching a sports ball, like a Super Bowl kind of situation, or outside of the U.S. maybe you're like really into football. Watching with other people is a totally different experience than watching it by yourself. You don't worry, even if you're surrounded by other people who are cheering and screaming and jumping and probably pushing on you, you still are going to be so zoned in on what you're interested in that you'll get a weird sort of tunnel vision. At least I did on my very first launch. So you will still have that very personal experience with it. But at the same time, yes, I did say sports ball. At the same time, you want the whole reason that you're here in the chat room, right, is because you're part of the community, and the community is really what makes that experience so much more. And it's difficult to describe the differences. I can only liken it to a sports ball situation, or maybe going to see a movie by yourself versus seeing it with friends, particularly the movie you were really excited about, or all of your friends went to go see the movie and then you have to kind of see it by yourself alone.
I've actually done this.
Later on.
I have seen rocket launches by myself after shuttle because I was already at the Space Coast. I was there. There was a rocket launching. I'm like, I'll go watch that. And it is definitely neat, right? You're like, wow, that's neat. But it is not magical. To make it magical, you need to feed off that energy of other humans and give back to that energy. You be part of the cheering and the highs and the lows, right?
Yeah.
The oh, it's scrubbed, or the oh my God, it launched, I can't believe it.
Right.
And like collectively jumping at the sonic booms. There's something about that shared human experience that just it takes it from really quite amazing to just truly awesome and magical.
Yeah.
So wherever you go with other humans. Spaceview Park in Titusville is one place. There are going to be plenty, it will be hard to miss, especially for something like Heavy. There will be people lining the roads all up and down that whole area. Just remember, especially if you're traveling from overseas, a rocket like Falcon Heavy or any of the new Blue Origin rockets or any new rocket that is flying, it is a demonstration mission, and it will almost certainly have delays. So do not just think that you'll be able to come in a certain very small window and be able to watch it. Any of them, any demonstration rocket from any provider. This is a statement. So make sure you plan accordingly and have plenty of time to be here in the States on the Space Coast. You know, book your Disney tickets, your Universal tickets, SeaWorld tickets. Be ready to spend some time here on the at the Space Coast. Could be wrong. I'm just saying that historically speaking, even with shuttle, I remember we would go down and there were times where it was delayed, like they would try a launch attempt and it was delayed a month and a half. So, and that was with an operational vehicle. So that's something to remember.
Yeah. Mike, anything else?
Something that I wished was a thing, something that I wish was a thing and that I could be a part of someday is I wish that there was launch rollout parade parties that followed the rocket as it's coming out from the VAB going to the launch pad, you know, at a safe distance and everything like that.
Right.
All that sort of thing.
I'm picturing
cool
like glitter cannons.
Like a parade party marching along with one of those rollouts. Wouldn't that just be awesome?
I think it would be. I think it would be.
Leading Falcon to the pad is the high school marching band from
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yes, you know what? Yes and no. This is one of those few times where I guess it's not few times anyway, but this is one of those times where yes, I want that, but at the same time, I very simultaneously don't want that because I think it would. I feel as though that I can't talk. I feel as though that this should be so normal that it doesn't need to be celebrated every single time, is what I'm trying to get at. Does that make sense? So yeah, I do want that because I think it would be really cool and I'm really enthusiastic about it now. But I also feel like in 10 years, that's going to be dumb laughable because it's just going to be happening so often. Or like the coordination of that will be just ridiculous. Be like, all right, this one's rolling out, and then 10 minutes later we're going to be over here, and then they're serving hot dogs, but those are crap hot dogs. We got to go over here because they're serving, whatever.
I'm just saying, Disney has parades every day. That's our show, everyone.
All right,
I'd like to thank everyone so much for watching. I also want to thank our ground support citizens for helping make this segment happen. These are people who've contributed anywhere between $1 on Minds.com or $1 per episode on Patreon.com up through $2.49. Also, I want to let you know this is tentative. It is not official just yet, but we are working to get Paul Hildebrandt, who's been on the show before. I've forgotten the documentary he made.
Fight for Space.
Fight for Space. Thank you. I was like the Apollo. No, Fight for Space. He's actually working on a new Apollo 8 documentary, First to the Moon, and it will be starting a Kickstarter soon. So he isn't actually locked in for next week's segment, but we're really close to confirming that. So that's likely what we're going to be doing next week. I'd like to thank everyone so much for watching. After Dark, up next.